They're the team that I think can win the most different ways. And why do you say that? Well, what if the weather changes? Well, do I have a quarterback that can throw the ball in bad conditions? Yeah, they have that. Well, what if they take away your passing game? Do they have a running attack? Yes. Well, what if you get into a low-scoring game, 10-7, 14-10? Can they win that type of game? Yes. Can they win a shootout? Yes. What if they get a guy hurt? I believe that they're closer, especially as far as their skilled guys. They sustained injuries already on their offensive line, but I believe that they can handle that. They're the only defense that has 7 players that's played more than 250 snaps. So they have a rotation that's going to be hard to stop. Getting Ronald Darby back at the end of the season, that's going to help. These are the things that I believe make Philadelphia the best team. Not only do they have the best record, they've been the most consistent, and you can see them growing down this game against Dallas was a tough game. Wentz did not have a great game, but they found a way through the offense. The receivers looked like 2016 version the first half, and then made a big turnaround for the second half of the game. But they're the team that I believe have the variance and the variables to be able to win a multitude of different ways, and I love their quarterback.
I am not going to make the same mistake this year that I did last year. So my answer is no, they are not the clear-cut best team in the NFC, because right now I do not believe that there's a clear-cut best team in the NFC. I believe you can make an equally strong case for Philadelphia, Minnesota, and New Orleans, and right behind them, but clearly behind that group of 3, Carolina. Last year, I was all in. The team with the best record was the best team. They had the great story at quarterback. They were so well-rounded on offense, the Dallas Cowboys.
But, Nick, that's not your fault. We've seen that happen a lot of different times. Your Kansas City team happened. And then we've seen it happen to Aaron Rodgers. Like, we've seen it happen to Tom Brady. We've seen it happen to Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, where you could have a dominant regular season and get upset in the divisional round like the Cowboys did last year. But there's no way that you threw 10 games that you don't think that the Eagles are better than the Saints and the Vikings and Carolina.
No, I absolutely. Well, I do think right now they're better than Carolina. So let me focus on the Saints and Vikings. The Saints have been better than everybody the last 8 weeks. Like the 8 consecutive games, I should say, 9 weeks. They've been, to me, the best team in football. And we saw the different ways, you're talking about the multitude of ways they can beat you?
Yes.
I feel like the Saints are on that list. The Saints can beat you by running the ball down your throat. They can beat you with Drew Brees. And their defense, as of late, the last 2 months, can choke you out. Minnesota, I think, especially if they get a little juice from a quarterback change, I think Adam Thielen is a star in this league that no one saw coming. They have found a way to overcome the loss of Dalvin Cook, and that is a defense with all-pro guys at all 3 levels. Now, I can make a great case for Philadelphia as well. I do want to say one thing for you, jump in. I was down on Philadelphia 3 weeks ago compared to America. Philadelphia's been very impressive since then. I no longer think they're a tier beneath these other teams. I think they're with these
Well, thanks,
teams.
Nick, for bringing them up.
Well, no, I'm just saying maybe you can.
What's their record?
They're 9-1.
Oh, they played 10 games. They lost 1 time. Who'd they lose to?
They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay. All right.
When the Kansas City Chiefs were playing very well.
Now, what other team in the NFC or the NFL would be 9-1 and you wouldn't be saying they were the best team?
Well, I think, not to jump too far ahead, my guess is later in the show, we're going to talk about 2 teams with the exact same record in the AFC, and you're very convinced one is better than the other. So it can't simply be the team with the best record. Again, I say this all the time. Power rankings are not the same as standings. If they were, we wouldn't need them.
What is it about the Eagles that has you concerned? Where do you think they're vulnerable? Why do you think they are even slightly less likely to go to the Super Bowl than, say, the Saints?
I didn't even say they were less likely. I said I don't think you can say they are the best team. I think that the Vikings, Saints, and Eagles have had, to me, nearly identical seasons. I understand one team is 9-1 and the other teams are 8-2, but to me that is in the margins. Now, if at the end of the year that 9-1 CC gets them the 1 seed, then that's a different discussion.
Okay, I totally disagree. The Vikings on their backup quarterback. Drew Brees doesn't have the explosive weapons outside. They're doing it a different way with defense and running. No, Philadelphia's been the most consistent, and their quarterback has the biggest upside. Take that out.
Biggest upside compared to Drew Brees?
Hey,
yeah, Drew Brees, how long do you think he's going to play?
Okay,
but for
That's
this
my
year.
job. Here we go.
Okay.
they made people enjoy watching defensive football.
Yeah.
Coverage. I mean, Earl Thomas is an amazing safety. Now, he's the only one. They have to play a different style. They have to come up with a different identity. Now, their front seven is still very, very good. But it was predicated on getting contested throws on the outside or down the middle and creating turnovers. And if they didn't think all that worked, man, the enforcer, Cam Chancellor, man, he was scaring people around the NFL. Now, you talking about people who are relieved. My boy Larry Fitzgerald, he's for relieved. And a bunch of other wide receivers who have to make a living going across the middle.
Right.
I mean, Cam Chancellor is probably the #1 intimidator in the NFL. Yeah, I know they changed the rules, but it's not against the rules to hit you real hard. And that's what he does. Unfortunately, he has the neck injury. Richard Sherman has the Achilles. It's going to be hard to keep this identity that they've had, especially because these guys, the salary cap is disproportionate. And the amount of money that they spent on the defense, it's hard to find replacements because there's no money available.
They're not young. Those guys aren't. They're 30 years old.
Well, it's funny you mentioned they're not young. The moment the Legion of Boom came into focus for the league was not the Super Bowl. It was a regular season game against Tom Brady and New England when Richard Sherman chased Brady off the field and said a little something to him after they had beaten them.
Yeah, you mad, bro?
You mad, bro. If you had told me then that 5 years later, that group of young star defenders would be breaking down and maybe breaking apart, and the guy he's yelling at, Tom Brady, would be playing better than he's ever played, I'd have laid any amount of money in the world to say you're nuts. It was a 35-year-old quarterback. It was early 20-something-year-old defensive backs who looked just ferocious. And I'm going to bring up another Patriots Brady moment with this team. The Super Bowl they didn't get.
Yep.
Because here's what I know. If they win that Super Bowl, we're talking about the Legion of Boom the way we talk about the Steelers of the 70s.
Yep.
You know why? Not only because they have multiple rings, but winning that game probably makes a few of these guys Hall of Famers. Like if you are, and I know you're very choosy about who is and who isn't a Hall of Famer, and I'm a little more liberal with that, but if you have the all-pro designations that Chancellor and Earl and Richard Sherman have, along with multiple rings,
yes,
then you're in a different class of player. They didn't get that Super Bowl. They then had some bad luck as far as Earl got hurt last year. Cam held out a couple years ago. Sherman got hurt this year. And you mentioned whether they're going to stay together. They were publicly discussing trading Richard Sherman before this season. I now think the Seahawks are going to break their third longest in the NFL playoff streak of 5 straight years. And you do wonder if they're going to say, man, we love Richard Sherman, but we need a right guard and a right tackle and a left guard. Like, you wonder if they're going to, and a running back, allocate those resources differently.
And it's on the board that Cam Chancellor might not play again. I mean, this is a neck injury in a new era of football where the players are more informed than any other time. And anytime you're talking about a neck injury, especially a fullback, especially a safety, where they are battering rams, this is a significant injury. So we have to watch how this goes on. But I think that we've seen the Legion of Boom as we knew it. I think we've seen the last game with them collectively as a group.
Which stinks. Go ahead.
No, because you're right. We haven't seen a unit like that are fun to talk about, fun to watch, and all of it. But let's talk about what it means this season. Can they hold tight enough to get through this season with what they have now?
I don't see it. I mean, they got a tough schedule. I mean, last night, they've given away a couple games that now that we're getting to the end, I mean, their margin of error is real small. And their passing game is they just can't sustain that with that bad offensive line. So, no, I don't think so.
And I know they have the same, I don't think so either. I know they have the same record as Atlanta, but they don't.
No.
They're a game back of Atlanta because Atlanta now is the tiebreaker, and they still have games. Does Seattle, Philly, Jacksonville, the Rams in 3 consecutive weeks. Dallas wants Zeke's back. They don't have an easy road. I don't think they make the playoffs, and I don't know if we see those 3 guys together again.
Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.